A Place Called Perfect, Chapter 33. Let the Battle Begin. William and his reimaginator, Violet, Madeline and Anna, hid in the entrance hall of a tall building that acted as their access into no man's land. They watched Forgotten Road in wonder as watchers filed out through the arch, heading towards the gateway into Perfect. "They're leaving," Violet whispered. "What's going on?" "We need to get to Merrill's," William replied. They waited for the last of the watchers to go, then quickly ran for the lane and down towards Merrill's. The shop was empty. Voices were coming from the market yard, and they ran quietly towards them. A group of adults and loads of orphans were gathered round the rag tree. Madeline recognised some of the people in the crowd and ran with Anna to greet them. Violet spotted Boy and Merrill standing by the base of the tree, looking confused. "You're here," Boy said, relieved, as Violet and William reached his side. "What happened?" William asked. "I don't know," Boy said. "The watchers just left." "They've taken Iris," Violet said quickly. "Maybe they know what we're up to." "But why would they leave no man's land?" Boy asked, shaking his head. "The people of no man's land are saying they ran them out," Merrill spoke slowly. "You don't sound like you believe them, Merrill," William asked. The toy maker shook his head. "Some people did join the orphans in the fight, but not enough to threaten the watchers. We still need to convince the rest of no man's land to rise up. The watchers may just be heading to Perfect to get reinforcements." "I'll go into Perfect to have a look," Boy said, "and see if I can find out what's going on. Maybe we did scare them off. I won't be long." "I'm coming with you this time," Violet said. "Okay," William piped up. "We'll continue with the plan here and gather more support." Boy and Violet left William and Merrill to recruit by the rag tree and headed towards Forgotten Road. The gateway into Perfect hung open, the gatekeeper nowhere to be seen, so the pair slipped through unnoticed. Darkness was falling on Perfect once more as they snuck along Rag Lane, onto Archers Avenue, then up Edward Street. The town was empty. All the perfectionists were inside their homes. Keeping to the shadows, they ran past the town hall, stopping suddenly a little back from the Archers' Emporium. A huge crowd of watchers congregated on the street, filling it from one side to the other. Edward Archer was addressing them from the steps outside the shop door. George was just behind him, holding his mother tightly by the arm. Iris looked solemn and stern. Violet gulped. There were so many watchers, at least 200, far more than she'd ever imagined. "The no man's landers are making fools out of you," Edward shouted angrily. "Do you realise how stupid you look? I want all units inside no man's land. Anyone who is caught on the streets is punished by any means, the more painful the better. They will remember this treachery for decades and never stand against us again. We've been too lenient on them. We will squash them tonight. Do you understand?" A deep roar rang out through the streets. Then a few of the watchers stepped from the crowd and began to bark orders, dividing the men up into smaller groups. "What are they doing?" Violet whispered. "Getting ready to invade no man's land properly," Boy replied. "We have to tell William now." Violet tried not to panic as the pair sprinted back down Rag Lane and through the unmanned gate into no man's land. In the market yard, the 6 changed perfectionists were addressing a much bigger crowd, William and Merrill at their side. It seemed all of no man's land had taken to the streets. People who once rubbished their plans brandished all sorts of tools and readied to invade Perfect. William spotted Violet and Boy and ran to meet them. "It's happening," he smiled. "It's really happening. No man's land is rising." "The watchers! They're coming now!" Boy gasped, trying to catch his breath. How many of them? William asked, his tone suddenly deadly serious. Lots more than we thought, Violet replied. At least 200, more than us by far. Half of our army is my age. I don't know if we can beat them, Boy continued. Not yet. We need to change more people in Perfect. We can change more perfectionists. I know we can, Violet said urgently. How? William asked. The Watchers are coming. We've changed as many people as we can. Look around you. No Man's Land is ready to fight. Our plan has worked. We've got to face my brothers. There's no more time left. What if we can do both? Violet said. Like we'd planned. But it means we'd have to face the Watchers out there in Perfect on Edward Street, catch them before they come back to No Man's Land, she said, thinking on her feet. While the Watchers are distracted fighting the No Man's Landers, we can take the orphans and the rest of the imaginations and change as many perfectionists as we can. All we have to do is get them to their doorsteps and zap them with the Reimaginator. Someone can run round taking off their glasses as they sleep. Then, when they wake up and see what's happening, they'll join their families and fight. Brilliant, Violet! There's no time to lose, Boy said urgently. The Watchers are on their way. We have to move everyone out of No Man's Land, now. Night was setting in, and an energy unlike anything Violet had ever felt filled the cool air as William Archer and his makeshift army strode down Forgotten Road. The people of No Man's Land had a chance, more than a chance, to get back their lives. As they approached the lane that led to Perfect, William mounted the steps and turned to address the crowd. This is it, he said. When we get through the gate, keep moving. We want to hold the Watchers at the Archer's Emporium end of Edward Street for as long as possible, to give our young friends time and space to work unseen. They will change perfectionists on their doorsteps, and when our friends and family wake into their new reality, they will join the fight. I know they will. There were tears in the crowd as the No Man's Landers stood proudly shoulder to shoulder. Use your pain, William shouted. Don't let these years of exile mean nothing. We will take Perfect tonight, take back our homes, our families, and our pride. If this is the last thing we ever do, know that we fought hard and true for the right to be different, as free men and women, not for one, but for everyone. The crowd let out a deep and earthy roar, filled with passion. Violet looked at Boy, tears rimming her eyes. For you, she whispered. No, for them, he said, looking round at the small faces of his friends holding firm to jars of colour. They've lived too long without their families. Violet glanced back up at William standing tall on the steps. For all of us, she smiled. Boy squeezed her hand and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his expression had changed. It was hard, determined. William turned towards the open gate into Perfect, held up his arm and roared. Head down, he raced for the exit. Behind him were the men and women of No Man's Land, bearing axes, shovels, hatchets and pitchforks. A group of Watchers approaching from the other side, too slow to react, were the first victims of the battle. Violet turned to address her crew. They were the last remaining on Forgotten Road. Everyone held a jar, and Madeline was shakily trying to organise them into some kind of order. This group is first, she said, pointing to a row of orphans. The owners of those jars all lived near each other down the very end of Edward Street, so we will be well away from the battle as we change them and shouldn't be seen. We have to go, Boy interrupted, racing back through the gate. Now! He ran to help Jack lift the Reimaginator and headed out towards Archers Avenue. Everything was happening so fast. Injured Watchers lay groaning at the side of Rag Lane, and Violet winced as she stepped round a few in her path. boy had stopped at the top of Archers Avenue and was peering round the corner onto Edward Street. "What's going on?" Violet asked as they came to a halt behind him. "It looks like a standoff near the town hall. The No Man's Landers and the Watchers are facing each other," he whispered over his shoulder. "Let me have a look," Violet said, pushing up beside him. She could just see Edward Archer's head over the crowd. He was standing on a bench by the side of the town hall facing William's army. George lurked behind him, backed up by a wall of watchers. "William, it's been a long time," Edward shouted. "We were just about to go meet you and your friends. Isn't that a coincidence after all these years?" "I'm sure you've missed me, Ed," William smiled. "Not that much," Edward replied. "You and your pathetic army will regret this reunion, brother. Though I have to say I do admire your spirit." As all eyes watched the brothers, not a soul paid heed to the band of children that snuck out of Archers Avenue down to the opposite end of Edward Street. They stopped near the bookshop, and quickly Violet poured 8 imaginations into the central glass canister of the Reimaginator. "You have macula!" William shouted angrily at his brother. Edward looked at George. The taller twin snarled. "Yes, George," William said. "I know about her, and all this time you made me believe she was dead. You made us all believe we were dead." "You might as well be," George spat. The crowd behind William hissed and shouted, swelling forward. Alerted by the sound of Edward's voice, some perfectionists began opening their front doors. "We have an audience," William smiled. "That lot," Edward laughed. "Don't underestimate your citizens, brother," William warned. "That lot will do as I tell them," Edward snorted. "So, what's this rebellion all about? Want more food, do you? Or an hour or 2 of daylight?" "Well, we'll certainly be needing more food," William smiled, signalling to his army. The first line of No Man's Landers stood aside, and 5 changed perfectionists walked forward, took off their rose-tinted glasses, dropped them on the ground and crushed them under their feet. "You robbed years from us and ripped our families apart," Billy roared. "You won't take anything more from me. I'll die winning back these streets if I have to." Edward's face dropped and he looked back at George. The taller brother moved forward towards the No Man's Landers, his fists clenched. The watchers were looking at each other now, too, and a murmur ran through their ranks. "Billy Bobbins," Edward called, silencing the crowd. "Seems we didn't mush your brains altogether. You hadn't many to begin with. I would have thought it an easy job." "You—" One of the other changed perfectionists grabbed Billy's arm, holding him back. "Your rebellion has got a little out of hand, I'll give you that," Edward said, composing himself to address his younger brother. "So you kidnapped a few perfectionists and told them what to say. Do you think that's scaring me? Go back home. Take those fools with you, and we'll forget this ever happened." "Fools!" Billy spat. "I may have been your fool for years, but I'm not any more, Edward. You'll never control me or my family again. I'll see to that." "Oh, he can think for himself. Seems our hollower is not working as well as it should," Edward continued. "After we sort this little rebellion, we'll fix the problem. Thanks for bringing it to our attention, Billy." "You might have a bigger problem than you think." William smiled. "Have you checked your imagination stores yet? I think they've run a little low." Edward turned to George once more, his face red with fury. "You think you're clever, William. You were always the same, lording over us with all your friends and your popularity breaking all the rules. Well, You won't do it now. This is our world. These are our rules, and you'll play by them. I don't know how you got those perfectionists to say what they did, but I don't care. Soon nobody in this town will need glasses. We'll fix their eyes perfectly, permanently, and there'll be nothing you or anyone can do about it." As William argued with his brothers at one end of Edward Street, perfectionists were falling asleep all over the place at the other. Madeline ran to the next house on her list and knocked on the door. A man answered, and quickly she grabbed his glasses. "Larry Doyle!" she called over her shoulder, racing ahead to the next house. Boy, who was standing poised with the Reimaginator, pressed a button and a shot of purple gas flew from the machine up the unsuspecting man's nose. He collapsed to the ground asleep, joining the others who lay strewn all over the street. Boy stepped round Larry's unconscious body and raced after Madeline to his next target. "Ellen Smolds!" Madeline called, speedily removing the woman's glasses. Ellen looked around confused and, eyeing the sea of sleeping bodies, screamed, "They're killing us! They're killing us!" All eyes, Edward's and George's included, turned towards the bloody sound. Violet froze. "What is going on?" Edward roared. "You're not as clever as you think, boys," William said. "If you happened to ever drink your own tea, you'd have noticed it tasting a little different today." "They're killing us, Mr. Archer! Down the bottom of the street!" Ellen Smolds called, racing frantically through the crowd. Edward looked around confused. George raced from behind his brother towards the no man's landers, followed by a stream of watchers. "Attack!" William cried, advancing forward. The army of ragged no-man's landers charged, following their fearless leader. Their years of imprisonment burned in their eyes, adding strength to their bones. The battle had begun. Cries and roars rose above the street as William's army threw all they had at the watchers. Pitchforks, shovels, even planks of wood served as weapons as Violet, Boy, Jack and Madeline and the orphans danced through the battle to change more perfectionists. The unchanged were not hard to spot, the only ones standing still, open-mouthed amid the chaos. Violet ran straight for a woman Madeline had told her about just meters away. "Sinead Cribbets!" she roared, pointing at the lady. "I have her! I have her!" one of the orphans shouted, running forward to fill the Reimaginator with murky gas from his jar. Within seconds, Boy pushed the button and Sinead was unconscious, asleep amongst the mayhem. Violet fought her way through the sea of battling bodies to point out another perfectionist. The jars of imagination were dwindling. Their plan was working. One by one, the sleeping perfectionists woke and pulled themselves from the ground to find out what was going on and join the no-man's landers in battle. Violet was just pointing at another stunned onlooker when Boy yelped and collapsed to the ground. George Archer loomed over him. "Think you'll take Perfect?" He gave a grisly smile, a golf club hanging loosely by his side. "Not without this stupid machine, you won't." The tall twin took a swing at the Reimaginator and glass flew through the air in all directions. Boy dragged himself furiously off the ground and jumped onto George's back, beating him with his fists. It was too late. William Archer's machine was smashed to smithereens. George Archer wrenched Boy over his shoulder and dropped him onto the road. "You!" he spat. "You've been the bane of this place from the beginning." He raised the golf club above his head as Boy struggled onto his feet. George brought the metal stick down with speed, smashing it against Boy's shoulder. Violet's friend roared, collapsing onto the tarmac. "No!" she screamed, running blindly towards the giant. Anger pulsed in her veins. She bared her teeth and bit deep into George Archer's hand. He wailed and dropped his weapon. "You vermin!" He grabbed Violet by the hair and pulled her close enough to smell his stinking breath. I'm going to make you watch while I pulverise his little head." Violet squirmed, kicking wildly at George's gangly legs as he bent to pick up his club. "Who knew my golf skills would come in so useful? Even with one hand I've got a great swing." He smiled as Boy lay groaning. Violet wriggling, trying to free herself from his grasp. "I've often thought it'd be much more fun if the golf ball screamed when you hit it." Violet shrieked as the club clashed round Boy's head. Suddenly she was pushed sideways and fell, hitting the ground with a painful thud. Boy was on the road a little away, struggling to his feet. She hurried across to him. "What happened?" he gasped. "I thought George would kill me for sure. I thought I was dead." "It's William," Violet pointed. "He saved you. He saved us." William Archer wrestled with his older brother on the ground just meters away. Quickly Violet helped Boy off the road to the footpath. For a moment they rested, gathering their breath amid the madness. The struggle was in full flow. The people of Perfect battled side by side with their long-lost friends from No Man's Land. Woken up to their new reality, the Perfectionists fought fiercely against the Watchers for a freedom they never knew they'd lost. "Violet," Boy said urgently, "look!" Edward Archer stood solemnly at the other side of the road. The stocky man watched in horror as his dreams of perfection crashed down around him. Suddenly his gaze fell on William and George, still exchanging blows. His face changed, and with swift and purposeful movement he disappeared into the crowd. And that's the end of chapter 33.